Net.tv Part 2. It is 9:30 on the East Coast, and the fun continues. We have a bumper running, and we are recording. We are streaming live, and we have a chat room waiting, and we have a live guest in the green room. So let's switch to Studio 8 in... kind of held you up there on the countdown. I didn't hit the button in time. I forgot. I have a lot of things going on. Well, folks, you have only begun to hear some of the mathematical challenges of the resolution of the digit pi to the 1,000th decimal point. And we're just getting started. Folks, as you know, at 9:30 on Wednesday, normally our guest is Michelle Medlock Adams, and I hope that you will keep her in your prayers, as well as her grandson Bear, who is undergoing some surgery, and that's happened, and but the recovery takes time. It's just, so she is traveling, and that's not unusual, but the reason she's traveling is something that deserves some of our prayers. But she always finds interesting people to stand in her stead. Okay, so tonight, here's what we're going to do. We are going to bring you, look at this smiling face. Shannon Anderson is with us, and behind her are numerous books. Now, Shannon, tell us how you know Michelle.
Michelle and I both live in Indiana, and we both are writers, and I met her at I don't even remember what the first writing conference was that I met her at, but we have been to many of them together, and we shared the same agent, Kyle Young. So we have just, through writing mostly.
Okay. Folks, when we have a new guest, we have a dry run test connection. So I've had a chance to share some time with Shannon, and I promise you that is not the answer that she gave me earlier. You, Shannon, are a Hoosier. You are. And that's all that matters. Michelle has done many things, and she's well accomplished, but children's books is really what she kind of cut her teeth on. And you've written a few children's books of your own, have you not?
That's right. Yes. My very first children's book was about my daughter Maddie, who had to wear an eye patch for 3 years because she has amblyopia, and it was called I Am Not a Pirate. And my newest one is actually Y is for Yet. I'm really big on growth mindset. And so Y is for Yet is all about the power of yet. If you think you can't do something, if you put that word yet at the end, I can't do it yet. It makes it more powerful.
It gives it hope. Now, is children's book your heartthrob? How far back does that go?
Well, I have been an elementary teacher for 25 years. And back when I was in high school, my high school job was working in the public library in my hometown. And our library had an upstairs and a downstairs. And the downstairs was the whole children's section. And so I got to come in after school each day at 4:00 when the children's librarian left. And then I got to be the children's librarian for the evening. And so it was a lot of fun because parents would often come and they would go upstairs to the adult section and just send their kids downstairs. And I had a great time matching them to books and to see them giggle when they're reading books, and just the excitement of when new books came in, being the first one to read them before, they were shelved. I just fell in love with kids' books all over again from I used to love them when I was a kid. So I had this idea. I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I had this idea when I worked at the library that, in all my spare time on the weekends and summers that the teachers have, I'm kidding, that I would be able to write children's books. And so that's something that I aspired to do and didn't start doing until about, I think 2013 was when my first book came out.
I just got a text. 2000 what?
2013.
2013. I was listening to this, and you said you've been teaching elementary school for 25 years. I thought, well, 25 years ago, you must have been a student in elementary school. You don't look old enough to have been teaching. And the other thing is, when you say librarian, the stereotypical imagery that puts in my mind, at least, is usually an old lady, that looks over her glasses, and a little gray hair. So I guess I just went to the wrong libraries, but
Yeah.
so the Dewey Decimal System. Remember that? That's how I learned math.
Yeah.
Trying to find a
Yeah.
dang book.
Yeah, we still had library cards and everything back then, that you put in the little pocket in the book.
Yeah, and the Dewey Decimal System, and then you had the card catalog by author, by subject,
Yep.
and by what was the other one? There was three
By
categories:
author,
subject,
by author,
and then I
by
guess the
subject,
numerical listing. I don't know.
by title.
Oh, hello. Who would ever search for a book by the title? Try that on Google these days, and you'll wind up. Who knows where?
You wind up on Amazon.
Yeah. Is libraries and the printed books kind of a dinosaur now?
I still go. I was just there this week.
Is it crowded?
No, as a matter of fact, our public library with social distancing, you're only allowed to have 10 people in the library at a time, and you have a half-hour time limit. I was kicked out.
Are you kind of a library junkie?
I'm a nerd.
Come on. Tell us about some of your teaching experience. You've kind of taken the teaching experience to be, I assume, the foundation for writing your books. But if you've been teaching 25 years, you've got some stories to tell. Let me ask you first, thinking back 25 years and thinking today, how have children changed?
Oh, wow. A lot. Yes. I started out in first grade, so my first years teaching were... I'm sorry?
I did too. Then I went to second. 20 years later, I graduated.
But, back then, first grade, so 25 years ago, we were teaching them to read, and now they're expected to learn that in kindergarten. And in first grade, you're already expected to know how to read, and you're going from there. So the expectations have definitely been pushed down, and the teachers feel that pressure every year with the standardized tests. They keep pushing down how much they need to know. And so I feel like that has changed a lot, but also just culture has changed. The home lives have changed. And with all of the technology, although it can be wonderful, there are also issues with kids need that constant stimulation now because they're just so used to having everything instantly. They're used to having entertainment all the time that you really have to be willing to entertain or infotain while you're teaching as well to keep their attention.
Infotain. That's a word, isn't it? I guess I have never thought of it.
Edutain.
You have to edu. Okay. If you could change anything in the way school is done today, what are some of the challenges that you see, and what would be some of the things if it were on your watch and your call and it would happen the way you wanted it? What would you change?
Well, two big things. One is I would love to narrow down and get rid of as much of the standardized testing as we could. But another one is I wish we could bring God back into the schools and bring prayer back into the schools. One thing that I did while I was teaching, and I say did because I'm on sabbatical leave this year. I'm taking the year off. It was supposed to be to travel and do author visits all over the country, but COVID happened. But what I was starting to say is the inspiration for me writing my newest Christian book that's coming out in February, A D Today. So this one, was because I felt like our family was not thinking of others as much as we should be. And I could give you a whole long story about that. But one of the ripple effects of us deciding to do a good deed a day for a year was that my daughter started to scan the world for what they could do or what the needs were rather than what the day could bring for them. And so that was one of the wonderful ripples that happened. And one thing that happened with my youngest daughter, Maddie, was she noticed, and so with me being a teacher after school each day, she would come running down to my classroom after she was finished with school for the day. And she came down one day and said, "Mom, there were some kids today that said that they have never been to church." And she was just flabbergasted because she had, grown up, going to church, going to youth group. That was always an important part of our family lives. And she just couldn't believe that these people didn't know who Jesus was, had never been to church, didn't own a Bible. And so as we were going through this process of doing a good deed a day, she asked if for hers, she could get a Bible and give to this person. And so, this is a public school, so guilty. My first thought was, am I going to get in trouble for this if I hand out a Bible at school? And then I thought, well, wait a minute, this is her. She's handing it out, not me. So yeah, let's do it. And so we got one of those adventure Bibles and she gave it to someone. And so one of the great things about this Deed a Day project, and maybe I should back up a little bit and tell you what that is.
Please do, because the chat room is exploding with interest on this.
All right. So I had this day that I shouldn't say a day. It was something that just built up over time where I felt like we were kind of on this treadmill of life, and things have slowed down now only because of COVID. But I felt like we were on this treadmill and we were just doing things, going through the motions. We weren't really putting much thought into each other or into what we were doing. And so I had a heavy heart one night and I just kind of prayed about it and decided we need to do something to be thinking of others more. And I went to the store and I bought a journal, a composition notebook, and I just wrote Deed Diary on it. And this is the actual one that we used. And I decided to just have a little family meeting. So I called the girls in. I have 2 daughters and my husband. I remember he was sitting in the recliner. And I said, I think that we need to try to figure out something we can do to think of others more. And so I bought this notebook. And I think it would be awesome if we could do something nice for someone every day. And so we talked about what it means to do a good deed for someone, that it couldn't just be sending a birthday card to grandma when we always send a birthday card to grandma. It had to be something that was an unexpected act of kindness. And so we talked about what that could be and we started doing it. And so it became this wonderful thing at dinner every night because I wrote down everyone's name for the date. So it would have the date and then it would say me, Matt, Emily, Madison. And we would sit down at dinner and I would say, okay, I'd get out my pen. Emily, what did you do for someone today? Maddie, what did you do for someone today? Matt, what did you do? Here's what I did. And we would share these things that we did for other people. And it could be something really simple, like, I made sure that every place I went, I held the door for everyone behind me, or I gave a sincere compliment, or I drew a picture for my teacher, or something like that. It didn't have to cost anything. And there were some mornings that we would do special things. Like there was a morning that we went to the bakery, I remember, and we bought a dozen of these smiley face cookies. And we had the baker put them in individual bags. So we had these 12 different bags with the smiley face cookies and we handed them out and just said, have a nice day. I remember when we got to school that morning, Maddie said, hey, will you stop a second? And I stopped in front of the school so she could jump out of the van and give the crossing guard one and say, have a nice day. And so just little things like that. And then it became this great conversation to have at night to talk about what did we do for other people, what were their reactions. And the experiment started working because I noticed that instead of us thinking of ourselves or thinking, like, well, I'm not going to let the dog in, you let the dog in, when different things are happening in our home, we were being more mindful. And, if there was a piece of trash outside, someone was going to pick it up and throw it away, even if it wasn't theirs, because they were starting to scan, like I said, things that were needing to be done, that should be done, doing the right thing. And so as we were doing this, Maddie was noticing things like kids that didn't have a faith life of any kind. And we're sharing that with Maddie. So back to where I was in my story, we got this Bible, handed it out. And so that evening I asked her, well, what was her reaction? What did she think? And she said, oh, she was so excited. But Mom, when I handed that out, this other girl said she doesn't have a Bible and she has never been to church. And could we get her a Bible too? And so I said, well, yeah. And so we did. Well, the ripple just kept happening, and we were handing out Bibles at school. And we did this like 5 or 6 times. And then here's the clincher. So one morning we were going to school, and she hands up this tattered piece of paper, and I still have it in my little drawer in my bedroom, the one that's my love drawer, all the things I save, mementos that mean a lot from my girls. Well, it was a tattered piece of paper, and she said, when we get to school, Mom, could you make copies of this? And I said, yeah, sure. What is it? And she said, well, I just need like 6 or 7 copies. All the kids that we've been giving Bibles to, we're meeting on recess, and we're going to meet under the big tree. And this has the different places in the Bible that they may have heard of, because they don't know anything, Mom. I'm just starting to tell them about Jesus. And okay, mind you, she was 9 years old. So I am tearing up going to school. And then when I actually got to school and got to see the piece of paper and what she had on it, I should have brought it in the room with me. She put things like, if you want to hear about how, God made the world, we need to look at Genesis. And she put, where Genesis is. It's the first book in the Bible. And then she looked up, like, if you want to hear about, you've probably heard of Noah's Ark. If you want to hear that story, look here. And if you want to hear when Jesus was born, the story of Christmas, when you celebrate with Santa, it's really about Jesus. She's writing all these things down. On her own, she came up with this. So it just, my mama heart was just exploding. And so, of course, I made copies of that for her. And she had her little Bible study on recess. And that was one of the amazing ripples that happened from doing this day-to-day and seeing things that are needed and ways that we can spread kindness, and ways that, throughout this whole day-to-day process, it wasn't just about doing good for others. We were backing it up with, this is God's commandment, to love him, but also to love others. And so that was really cool. But for her to do that kind of put me in my place, because I was the type in church, I didn't grow up going to church very much. My parents just didn't go. For whatever reason, God filled me with his spirit and a joy and love for him. And I just always wanted to go. I was always bumming rides from neighbors and my grandma and trying to go to church when I could. And I just never got that upbringing that we were thankfully able to give our girls, where they were learning verses and they were learning so much more than I was, as an adult when they were very young. And I was the type that at church, my volunteer work was helping prepare breakfast and rocking babies in the nursery. I was always a nervous wreck to help with Sunday school or anything like that, because I was afraid, what if I mess something up, or I can't answer their questions, or I don't know that Bible verse? And I was just so afraid I would do something to jeopardize their faith or what they believe, because I didn't know everything. And for her to do that gave me the nudge that I needed to do something, and I needed to be teaching too. And I'm sure you've all heard of Fellowship of Christian Athletes in high school and middle school. Well, we had that in our high school and our middle school, even though they were public schools. And God put it on my heart to start a Fellowship of Christian students at the elementary level. Because here are all these kids that don't know Jesus. And my goodness, they're so much more open to learning about God, and they have so much curiosity at that age, and they're not worried about what other people think as much at that age. And God just put it on my heart to ask permission to start a Fellowship of Christian Students at my school. And so I didn't know what to do with that, and I prayed about it, and I finally I made an appointment to go see the superintendent, and I asked permission if I could start that, and we started it, and it was amazing. And God's hand was in it every step of the way. There were parents that were reaching out to me and saying, well, let me back up. What the superintendent told me was I could do it, but it had to be before or after school hours, not during.
Right.
And I was fine with that. And he said I couldn't send anything home in book bags. It had to be spread word of mouth. And so I visited every church in our town on their Wednesday night youth groups and gave a little plug for it and said, hey, if you go to the elementary schools in our town and you want to be part of the FCS group, we'd love to have you. And this group ended up being the biggest club in the school. And when I left for my sabbatical leave, I made a fifth grade teacher who was helping me with the club, I made him promise that he would keep doing the club before I could leave because it was that important to me. But that club ended up being such an amazing thing. I had not only kids coming from these youth groups, but I was starting to get these emails from parents saying, you know, my child is coming home telling me about this new club at school, and we don't go to church. And, you know, we're not really religious, but could they come to your club? Oh my goodness. I mean,
you tell them yes.
Yes, of course. That's who I want to come. I want to have them come in and learn. And, you know, we just did so many cool things that just started conversations. We made FCS shirts and we put a Bible verse right on the back. So my kids, even though they can't meet during school for this club, when they come out of my classroom in the morning, because we had these on Friday mornings from 7 to 8 before school started. So when all these kids from all these grade levels are flooding out of my classroom with their shirts on and buzzing about what they've done, or carrying the things from the little lessons that we've done, or seeing the service projects and all of those things, they're getting doors opened for conversations, and other kids are asking them, well, wait a minute, even if it's asking, well, wait a minute, where did you get that donut? You know, oh, well, it was an FCS. Or, well, what does that shirt mean? Or what does that thing on the back of your shirt say? And what does that mean? And, you know, those kinds of things were happening. And even though our school is only around 300 people, we had 60 kids coming Friday mornings, an hour before school even started, to come and learn about God. And it was just amazing. I had people coming in that were high school and college kids that were my former students, and I would have them kick off the meeting with a little testimonial. And oh my goodness, when you see third, fourth, and fifth graders looking at these high school and college kids coming in to talk to them about their walk with God, they just look up to them and they just think that is just the coolest thing. And how neat is it that they lean on their God when they have problems or when they're stressed at school. And so it was just, if you can't tell, it was pretty amazing and exciting, and I loved every minute of it. So if we could bring God back in school, not just, you know, hiding it before or after school, I just think we could have such a different environment today.
Folks, I have to tell you that before we went on the air, Shannon expressed just how nervous she was, you know. And but you know, when you're excited about something, you know, that does something to you. And you were able not only to overcome anxiety, you know, tonight, but you have given our young people something to be excited about and to be bold about without. I'm impressed. I think I'm beyond impressed. I'm kind of blown away. And I was scrolling, you know, it's kind of hard for me to read the chat. One, I'm busy, but number two, the program that you see in the chat room is delayed a few seconds. So when a comment comes up, it's in reference, in a context to something you said 10 seconds ago. But I'm looking for it because Josephine Massaro commented, I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but she said that there needs to be an adult version of A D Today, and she has an author. She mentions it, and I'm not plugging a book here, but I was impressed. It says, I have an author who wrote A Case for Kindness, and she will be my guest on October 25th. She'll be teaching kids about kindness. It's on Facebook in her hands. Just, you know, well, you know, I don't know if you're still in the chat room. You got to go read this stuff. It's really good. And so the book, A Deed Today, now that I've got two books on my mind, is that available today, or is that an upcoming book?
So A Deed Today, this is for adults, actually. It is a book that I wrote as a book study, and it starts out by talking about, you know, how we started with the whole family experiment and how that spread, and the ripple effects of kindness, but also the ripple effects of our faith. Each member of my family. So I just go through explaining, you know, like how it caused each of us to grow in our faith, and we can kind of trace it back to that experiment we did, you know, when the kids were younger, with doing a good deed a day and recording that and having that experience every day to share together.
You know, adults probably would be more afraid, you know, because they think through it too much. You know, if I do something nice, they'll you know, if I do something nice, my wife, she assumes I'm guilty of something, you know. What'd you do? Did you just order something? Did you just order something from Sweetwater Electronics?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I started an adult Facebook group called Adita Day. And so that is where we as adults are sharing our blessings. There are people that are posting things that are happening in their lives where someone has blessed them. And there are ideas posted all the time. I had someone post this month a whole calendar for the month of October of acts of kindness that you can do each day. And we've had people post scripture readings for every single day for the month of October that all have to do with kindness. And so people are just always sharing inspiring videos and quotes and scripture and things in that Facebook group. And it's grown to over 1,000 people just sharing blessings that are happening to you and that you have witnessed. And it's just a wonderful, positive place to share. And it's growing. Yeah.
Shannon, there is such a need because so much of social media only points out how divided we are and how hateful we are to each other, and how we assume that if somebody believes differently than we believe, that makes them the enemy. And we do need to take things like that serious, but at the same time, there's so much good news. So, folks, you are an inspiration, because see, our mission here is similar, because you know we need encouragement. We need a safe place where we can go and strengthen ourselves. And the funny thing is when you do the day-to-day, I mean, the epiphenomenal effects, you know, I was just thinking a day-to-day, you know, you can bring a blessing into somebody's life. You can give them a compliment. You know, okay, that's layer one. I had no idea that you had layer two. You go home and you sit around with your family and you share with each other. And, you know, which serves two purposes. One, it blesses everybody, but it also creates an element of accountability. You can't go to that meeting and say, well, I just didn't do anything today. You know?
Yeah.
So I didn't even think about that. But then the third element is how you can encourage others to do as you do. I mean, what if Adita Day went viral and all of it, I mean, and we start receiving blessings from, you know, like, what? What'd I do? We didn't do anything. You don't have to do anything. You know, it's, that is cool. That is beyond cool. Well, doggone, we have run out of time. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up to wind it up?
I just thank you for the opportunity. Michelle sent me a message and said, hey, can you take my place? And I said, well, sure, I'd love to do that. And so I'm glad that I had the chance to meet you and to be on here. Everyone's been so friendly in the chat as well.
Well, you have blessed us beyond anything you can imagine, and you are welcome here to share anytime, Shannon. You are a champion for Jesus Christ, and we appreciate your boldness, your kindness, and your sincerity, and your enthusiasm. What a package. Appreciate you sharing tonight.
Thank you.
Oh. Folks, live from the Eagle's Nest, there's the view of it right here on pjnet.tv. What a great night it has been. For those of you in the chat room, you know what I'm talking about. Folks, I hope that you will join our fellowship at pjnet.tv. You want some encouragement? You need some encouragement, don't you? I think we all do. I'd like to encourage you. Actually, I'd like to challenge you. I'd like to have you ask yourself two questions. First, what is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? Might be something as simple as a deed a day. Look at the difference it would make. The second question is a little more serious. How long ago was that? Folks, it takes boldness to change a dark world out there. And I certainly hope that none of us would ever be satisfied with our answer to either of those two questions.